Matt Muchagrosso here, creator of Xenoplicity and the queue system that it runs on. Today's video, let's talk about role-playing. Let's talk about it in a general sense and also have some specifics of what makes good role-playing versus bad role-playing, because there's a difference. And one of the things I talk about in my book is that good role-playing as well as bad role-playing are both contagious. So if you're doing it wrong at your table, there's a good chance you're going to get everybody at the table doing it wrong as well. And if you're doing a good job and you're promoting a good, healthy role play at the table, then there's a good chance that you can prompt and promote other people at the table to do likewise. So it can be contagious. So what is role playing? Let's really define what it is we're even talking about. There's a lot of confusion about this, and I get it because there's as many opinions as there are gamers in our hobby, so not everyone has the same opinion on what it even is. Role-playing, at its core, if you boil it totally down, it is playing pretend. It's playing make-believe. It is putting yourself into a character's shoes and acting as if, okay? Acting as if you were that person, embracing their morals, embracing their values, embracing their worldview, instead of relying on your own. You are not the character you play. Your character is not you. You should not make a character that is you in the game world. Don't do that. It's just not a good way to play the game. You want to play a fictional character. You're playing in a fictional setting. The setting you are playing in is different in some way from reality because it's not the real world. Even if it mirrors the real world in most ways, it's still going to have some aspect of it that puts it into the realm of fantasy. And it doesn't really matter. It's irrelevant whether or not you're playing sci-fi, whether you're playing post-apocalypse, whether you're playing fantasy, as far as a genre goes. It's all fantasy. It's all make-believe. It's all fiction. Role-playing is collaborative, emergent storytelling. That is at its core what we're doing at the table, okay? When you play a tabletop role-playing game, that is what you're doing. You are collaborating with other people at the table, okay, to do this together, and it's emergent storytelling. A story is not the goal of the game. I specifically state this in my own book, but the key is that a story is going to get told, but the story is a reflection on what happened in the game. The story is not the point of the game. And this, again, is one of those things a lot of people just misunderstand. They think they have to write a script, they have to write a novel, and then they're just going to have people play out aspects and roles within that. That's not the case. You don't know how the story is going to go. The part of the fun of what makes a tabletop role-playing game a unique, awesome experience is that you don't know how it's going to turn out. It can go in a lot of different directions. Some good, some bad, some tragic, some exciting. But it can all be fun if your players at the table, if you guys all have the proper perspective on what it is you're there to do. You are making this unique person, and don't build a character, you make a character. It's good to know what it is they do for fun, what it is they're scared of, what are their goals. You need to know kind of, at least on some level, where they come from and what makes them, okay? And that way you have something to kind of fall back on who this person is and what they want, right? They need to be a person. They don't need to be a two-dimensional cardboard cutout. So know your character well enough that you can actually make decisions as they would make decisions. And this is why a character, the longer you play the character, the easier this gets. And so the first session or two can be a little bit difficult because you're just getting into their shoes. But the more you play this character session to session, you're going to find that it's easier to make decisions as they would. And it will become so intuitive the longer you play a character that you don't even really have to think about it. You just know who this person is. You can just play them. What drives a character that a player is playing is not the player's own motivations and the player's own goals or the player's own knowledge. It is the characters. And this is a distinction you have to make. There's a lot of videos online talking about metagaming and the issues with it and how not to do it and yada yada. There is an aspect of metagaming that is just going to be part of the game because you are in fact not your character. You are a player sitting at a table, but you need to minimize it. Because at the end of the day, when you're sitting at the table, while the game is in session, while it's going on, you shouldn't be thinking as you, the player. You should be thinking as you, the character. And if that's your mentality, if that's your mindset, then metagaming is going to be very minimal and it's going to be at a manageable level because you're focused on the right stuff. The right stuff is making decisions as your character would make them, which may not be best for your character. It may actually be detrimental to your character, but you're still going to have the character do those things because it's what your character would do. It's not about what's actually best in the game session or even what's best for the narrative of what's happening. It's not what's best for necessarily that character's health. Sometimes you might actively make a decision that leads to your character's death. If I'm playing a character in Call of Cthulhu and I as a player, I've played enough scenarios, I've played that game long enough that I get it. When I see that monster, I'm going to go insane. And I might try to shoot a gun at it and I might try to hurt it. But at the end of the day, if I run into the monster, I'm a goner. And I know that as a player, right? But as part of solving the mystery, the character that I'm playing, the investigator that I'm playing, is driven to try to find the answers. Me as a player knows that that's probably going to result in their death if they actually uncover enough of the truth to really piece these things together, that there's a good chance I'll go insane or I'll get killed or, who knows what. But I'm still going to do it, right? Even if me as a player knows that there's a monster in that room, but my character doesn't, so I'm still going to have them using their flashlight, go into that dark room and look around, right? You don't want to try to play it to win it, okay? That's not the purpose of a role-playing game. It's not the purpose of of the games that we play. There is no winning. There is no losing. If you die, you die. That's part of the story. At that point, your death becomes part of the game. It becomes part of the story. You make a new character and you keep going, or you start fresh with a different scenario, a different night. If that's the end of the night and everyone's dead, total party kill, so be it. Guess what? That's the end of that storyline. That's the end of that arc. It has ended, and fate decided that. It wasn't up to the players to decide it. It wasn't up to the game master to decide it. It's the way that the game flowed. It's the way that gameplay kind of went in its own direction. Let's put it this way. There's an equation to playing this game. A role-playing game equals game setting plus game master preparation plus player choice, i.e. player character action, plus dice results. All of that equals gameplay. And so all of these things go together to create gameplay, to create the narrative, to create the story. It is an equation. There is a right and a wrong way to do it. If you're doing it right, all of these things factor in to give you the whole, to give you what you end up with at the end of the night. And you just rinse and repeat that from session to session. And so things kind of mold and adapt on their own just based on these things building on themselves over time. Let's talk about what role-playing is not. It is not acting. It is not doing funny voices. It is not dressing in costumes. It is not using props. It drives me up the wall why we see so many people on YouTube that are supposedly in this hobby, but yet they wear skits and costumes in their little videos. That's not part of the hobby. That's Halloween. That's dress up. That's theater. That's not tabletop role-playing. Tabletop role-playing is not theater. It's just weird to me. It's weird to me because that's not part of what we do at the table. Even in my own game table, there's always a couple of people that show up that like to do voices for their characters. And as long as they're consistent and it's not in any way distracting or over the top, it's not like I call them out for it, okay? But it's not something I would ever encourage. I would never recommend. I really don't even care whether they talk in first or third person. There's a lot of people on YouTube that try to give advice that say one is better than the other, that you should always use first person. It's irrelevant. It really is. Whether you say, he does this or I do this, one is going to sound better, sure, but I could care less. At the end of the day, as long as your decisions that you make are as your character would act and you're not just being you at the table, I could care less whether you say he or I. I really don't. That's not something I'm gonna You know, that's not a hill I'm going to die on. There's popular little game shows like Critical Role that are, these are actors, guys. They have a script, and tabletop role playing, there is no script. If you're going to role play at the table, if you're going to play these kind of games, get out of the idea that you can have a script, because that's defeating the purpose of what it is you're there to do. You're not doing emergent storytelling if you've got a script prepared. That doesn't mean I don't play modules, but the modules, when I play modules, I've done a video on this. When I do modules, they don't stick to what the module says. It's a springboard. It's a starting off point. I'll use the setting material. I'll use the gist of what's in there. But where that goes is never what's at the end of that book. It just isn't. In my experience, it always goes in its own direction, and it ends up becoming its own thing, because that's the game. That's what we're there to do. We're there to do emergent storytelling. I have no idea how it's going to go. No idea at all. And I don't try to. I don't try to control that. I just let it go. Every character you make is an opportunity to play a completely unique, different person. So take advantage of that. Play something out of the box. Play something that you never would have thought to play. You do not need to have the knowledge that your character has. They're different. Let's say you play a doctor, right? Heart surgeon, whatever, doesn't matter. Like, think of the TV show Lost, right? Like, the main character was named Jack or something. He's a doctor. He's a really good surgeon, right? That actor doesn't know the first thing about being a surgeon, but he's playing one on TV, right? And you, as the audience, you believe it, because why not? Why wouldn't you? It's make-believe. It's fiction. Just because you are not that thing in real life does not mean you can't just play that thing. And you don't need to know all the technical jargon. You don't need to know all that nonsense. You just play the character. And if you have to do surgery, well, then you just say, okay, I'm doing surgery. and you kind of just role play that out, just like you would see on TV or a movie. No one in that TV or movie knows the first thing about doing those things in real life. And as a matter of fact, a lot of that stuff, like if you're sitting down next to a real doctor or a real nurse, they will laugh at a lot of those shows and go, that's not how that works at all. That's just not the way that works. But who cares? It's not reality, it's fiction. So have that same mindset at your table. You don't have to be a brainiac to play a super smart person in the game. It's all role play. It's all fiction. It's all make-believe. So you just, when you were a kid, you didn't need to actually be Spider-Man to play Spider-Man with your friends. That's no different. It really isn't. Now, let's talk about how to role play. Players should narrate their player character's actions and their reactions, okay? Game masters should narrate the world and the NPC actions and reactions. Pretty self-explanatory, right? But it's not, because so many people get this wrong. If both parties are just doing their part, then what you get together is the whole, right? Because you got two halves, they make a whole. There you go. So everyone's got to stay in their place. They gotta kind of do their own thing, but it all works together to build something greater than any of those things by themselves. It is your job as a game master to narrate what characters see, what they smell, what they hear, okay, what they feel. It is not your job to narrate their reaction to those senses. And this is a big distinction. So let me give you an example. I, as a game master, I tell my table, it's extremely cold outside. I have just told them what they feel. It's cold, okay? It's up to the players to narrate and to role play what that means to that character, right? So you're going to see the players start to say, okay, well, I'm shivering. But that's the player's job to narrate that. It's not your job to tell the player your character's shivering. Don't do that. You do not control the reactions or the actions of the player characters, but you do control their senses, okay? I'll give you another example. We're in a dungeon. In the room up ahead, there's like some kind of demon, right? So as a warning that something is coming up, something weird or dangerous, in the room leading up to that, I might say to the player characters, you smell a really strong sense of sulfur in the air. And I just leave it at that. It's up to the players to react to that sense, to that smell. The thing is, if I don't tell them that that smell's there's no way for them to know that it's there, because this is a fictional reality. It's a fictional play pretend world. So if you're controlling the world, then you're controlling the smells. You're controlling the sights. That's part of the world, okay? When player characters enter a room, any room, me as the game master, I'm going to describe what it is they see, right? It's up to them to then interact with or engage with whatever's there or not. It's not my job to tell them, you walk up to the table and start flipping through a book. I'm not going to do that. I wouldn't do that. That's not my job. That's the player's job to control their character. But it is my job to say, you enter a room, and before you there's a table with several books on it. And then they take over. And see, it's a give and take. It's a push and pull. The game master is narrating the world and controlling the NPCs, how they act and how they react. The players are controlling their character, and they're narrating how they act and how they react. And so these things have to work in tandem. You should not be telling players how they should play their characters. And likewise, players should not be asking permission from the game master what they can do. If I'm a player, I'm not going to ask permission to draw my gun as I enter into a dark room. I'm just going to say, I draw my gun as I enter the room. Okay? I don't need to ask permission for that. It's my character. I'm going to play my character. If that's what I want to do, if that's what my character's doing in that moment, then that's just what they're going to do. If I walk into a room as a player character and I see that there's books on the table, then I'm going to say, all right, great. There's a table before me with books on it. I walk up to the table, I start flipping through the books. I'm looking for clues, or I'm looking for, what these books are about, right? And then the game master can go from there. They can tell me what it is I see. Okay, as you flip through the books, yada, yada, yada. You see some ancient glyphs, or you see some weird sketches, or you see a note falls out of one of the pages. Again, now you don't say you pick it up. No, you just let the players act. So the follow-up to that, if I'm the player character, I would say, great, a page falls out or a piece of paper falls out of the book. I'm going to reach down and grab it. I want to read what it says. You see what I'm saying? This is the give and take. This is the way it works. It works in tandem with itself. And the conclusion is you have role play. You have the game being played at the table. Okay. And again, guys, so often this gets done wrong. So that's why it's important that we address it and we just kind of talk about what's the right way to do this and why this matters. That's how you role play. Okay. So the game master is going to listen while the players narrate their PCs acting and reacting to whatever's happening. And then the players listen while the game master is going to narrate the world and narrate the NPCs acting and reacting. You see? And so it involves listening and then engaging, and a back and forth of this between the game master and the players, between the players and the players. They all work together, collaborative storytelling, and it's emergent storytelling because no one really knows how it's going to go until the game is played. That is the essence of role playing. So anyway, guys, I hope that clears that up and kind of answers any questions that people might have about that. That's what I think about this. Let me know what you think in the comments below.